Welcome to the G-Spot.
Five, four, three, two, one.
Hello everybody and welcome to Dynamic GT League's G-Spot for G number 43. And normally Ray would join us on the G-Spots. However, because I was away at the weekend, obviously I'm very late recording this, and I'm very late getting the audio done on it as well. Okay, quick recap of what the G-Spot is in the DGT League. It's basically where we can have a look at things that get reported. So we can show footage of why a penalty is given or not given, things like that. We can have a look at some of the weird and wonderful things that happen in the Dynamic GT League. Some of the funny things as well, like Jimmy missing the pits, although that happens so often now it's not funny anymore. Sorry, I'm lying. It's still funny. It's fucking hilarious. But there you go. Okay, so for today's video, I'm hopefully not going to waffle on too much. We have got one incident to look at, which was from the last race at Fuji. Yes, Fuji, and then a couple of extra bits we're going to have a look at. So I'm not going to hang about. I'm going to crack on with the information that we all want to see. P1, Race 3, report, admins, beef flaps. Okay, so the report from SRI, last lap, turn 3 and 4, I feel SGP defended in a way it caused a collision and let him keep his position. Also, can admins tell what is acceptable as parking it to when it's causing a collision to cars behind by someone thinking they are parking it? I will get onto that bit a little later in the video. Okay, so the steward's verdict, or the steward's view I should say first. SGP runs wide on the corner exit and lifts off the throttle to ensure he stays on the track. SRI is caught out and swerves right in avoidance, and there is minor contact before he gets sideways. Now, the steward's verdict is that there's no penalty to SGP, as SGP was not to blame as he lifted off the throttle to stay on track rather than parked it, and only hit the brakes for the next corner once SRI was to his right hand side. SRI was just unfortunate. He was even wider than SGP on the corner exit, which may have caused him to get sideways on the curb himself when swerving right. I would add as well that SGP is always, throughout turn 3, he is always ahead, so can choose what line he wishes to take through a corner. But we can have a look at the footage of what happened, and I can give my 2 pence worth. So let's crack on. Okay, so from spectate view, we can see that SGP has got front left completely gone as they're going through turn 3, the right-hander. Turn 4 is what I would call the left-hander. From this view, we don't really see much other than both cars go a bit wide, SRI getting wobbly, and through turn 4 they go. So looking on board SGP, what we're looking at here is he is on and off the throttle. It doesn't get on the brakes, but here, as the cars ran wide, he is off throttle at a point where perhaps normally he might be on throttle, but given that the car was on the curb, I can understand not being on the throttle. So SRI with a little bit more tyre life in that front left closes in, and as you see SGP is still ahead, and there's that point where SGP isn't on the throttle yet, as he's ran a bit wide, and SRI takes the back. Oh, I didn't take the back, he takes avoidance, sorry. Okay, so as we look at this again, I think we're going to pause it. Yes, we are. So it's at this point that SGP's car sort of starts running out wide, and for me personally, if you get out wide here, you don't want to be on the throttle, and SGP is coming off the throttle, and it's at that point that SRI does tag, he doesn't tag the back of him, SRI gets close and then moves over to the right hand side. Now what I would point out as well is that this curb on the left, the braking point is around about now, so the fact that SGP hasn't gone back on the throttle throttle here isn't a case of him parking it or doing something like that. He's actually now at the point where you want to be on the brakes anyway, and he gets onto the brakes now. SRI's moved over to the right, and that's when his car gets wobbly. So we'll go back and have a look at that again from SRI's view. Now again, I want to mention that with SGP being the car ahead, he can effectively take whatever line he wants around this corner as long as he's not forcing a car off the track. And I will emphasise again, he doesn't use his brakes around here, so it's not like he's trying to do any brake checking. Now as we get closer to the curb, we'll see that SGP does get over onto the curb, and we'll see that closing up of the cars. SRI is also off the throttle, and now back on the throttle. So this is where SRI, perhaps with the slightly fresher tyres, feels he's got more grip, but now they close up because SGP is off the throttle because he's going wide, and if he's on it he might spin, and then SRI ends up going a little bit wider. Now he does dip a wheel on the grass here, which is one of the reasons why it's possible that as he then here turns right, the car gets a little bit unbalanced. So as he moves over to the right here and then goes to straighten up, the car starts to slide on him, and it could be because of that rear left tyre dipping on the grass. So in terms of did SGP do anything wrong here, in the steward's view, no, he was ahead. He took a perfectly normal line on the exit of the corner. Yes, he's off the throttle, but he's off the throttle because he's running wide, and if he stays on the throttle, there's a good chance he's going to spin it on that curb. So he hasn't done anything that I wouldn't expect someone to do. And Steve F1 felt the same when reviewing the incident. Can understand it's frustrating for SRI though, because it is one of those corners where ideally at that point you want to be accelerating out of the corner, but with that corner it all depends on how your tyres are, the line you're on, if you got to lift off so you don't run wide, did you lift off early to get the turn in. There's a lot of different factors there. Now had SGP gone on the brakes towards that corner exit, then that would have been a bit more concerning, because that would be a situation where you wouldn't expect somebody to be on the brakes. So I can understand SRI's frustration, but yeah, SGP having what we would classify as not having done anything wrong. Okay, I mentioned that I would get on to the other part of the report, the request for the admins to give a clarification, and so we'll get on to that now. Okay, so clarification on the definition of parking it. The admins have discussed this and agree that the definition of parking it is as follows. A driver goes into a corner normally, and once at the apex, I've missed out right in there, and at the point of getting back on the power, they delay this action. They are not braking more, they are just delaying getting back on the power. In this situation, it is the responsibility of any cars behind to avoid contact. Any actions different to this definition is not a situation of parking it. It is a different situation altogether. For example, someone braking like Alonso did in Melbourne isn't parking it. It's brake checking or braking on a part of the track where braking would never normally be done, effectively doing unusual braking. The incident between SRI and SGP that was reported does not come under the banner of parking it. Now please do remember that when cars are on track and close together, braking points may differ due to many factors: amount of cars around, tyre life, tyre compound, track condition, and so on. So if someone does brake a little earlier than expected, it would not automatically be unusual braking. That would be expected braking. Dabbing the brakes in the middle of the main straight at Monza, well, that would be unusual braking. I did have a different description in there, but I decided to keep it a bit more clean. Now, unless you are actually slowing down safely to let someone through. Key word there being safely. So if you are slowing down to let someone pass because you've knocked them off the track, yes, it is technically unusual braking, but it's an expected action for a driver to take because of something that they've done. But key word being safely. So yeah, if you do hit someone off, don't just bang the anchors on in the middle of the corner when you're surrounded by cars. Do it in the nearest safe place. And as we've had at some tracks like Bathurst, yeah, we'd even say don't try giving a place back over the mountain, do it on the back straight. But that there's the definition of what we class as parking it. And yeah, so situations that fall out of that definition wouldn't come under the banner of parking it, just like I described the other day about someone might say that was a dive bomb, but if it doesn't meet the parameters of coming from a long way back, very late on the brakes, a potentially very unexpected attempt at an overtake, then it's not a dive bomb. If somebody's already there within fair range to attempt an overtake, it cannot be a dive bomb. So there we go. Right, okay, so now we've done that, I think we should have a look at what else we've got to have a look at for the remainder of this G-Spot. G2, race to Bathurst, gravel rush and a wall bash. Okay, so let's have a look at Nelly and a few other guys. So this was the last lap at Fuji. This was the big crash that we didn't really see. So Nelly goes off, Twilight and Jimmy come together. A spinneroonie for Twilight and Jimmy and okay, so yeah, not best for Twilight there. Okay, so let's have a look there. We're on board. Whoa, Nelly's way late on the brakes. Okay, so that's why he's gone deep. Tried to keep going, and SGP makes the move. Nothing wrong there, really. We'll see it from SGP. I mean, SGP's got much fresher tyres. He brakes late as well, but he's got the tyres to do it at this point. And yeah, Nelly's done well not to spin there. I wouldn't say it's an unsafe return. Twilight on the back of SGP, fairly decent tyres, in a nice position, running a little wide. Oh, he may have just been touched a little bit there by Jimmy. I'm wondering if perhaps Twilight checked up a little bit because of what was happening in front, and it's called Jimmy out. So let's have a look at Jimmy. Oh, he's a bit wide. Oh, breathe in. Oh, you know, he's done well to actually get that start. Oh, yeah, he has. He's just tagged the back of Twilight, as Twilight seems to have checked up because of what was happening in front. And Jimmy gets back on. Oh, wow. Oh, okay. Right. Oh, that's all right. Was he involved in this? Let's have a look. But yeah, Jimmy did well to actually get the car stopped initially. Very close to dipping a wheel in the grass. And when you do that there, it does end up badly. So this is Gary. So as he's heading into the corners, and then all of a sudden, yeah, car appears, a little wobbly. Art Pal's right up Gary's chuffed. So Art Pal may not have much of a view of what was happening ahead. Gary's car looking a little bit twitchy there. Might be a bit of lag. So yeah, I think from here, I don't think Art Pal can really see these cars, or if he can, maybe these. Yeah, that's Jimmy again getting so close. So yeah, so unfortunate for Art Pal. But yeah, Jimmy does tag Twilight, so really Jimmy should be, I think, waiting for Twilight on that one. So the question here would be, is this an unsafe return to track? Well, for it not to be, I mean, Jimmy has ended up in that position. He's not driven to that position, really. And as Gary's approaching, okay, if Jimmy can stay to the left here like this, he's okay. Okay, but his car is interesting. So he's got lots of steering left on, but his car's going right. Okay, now the front end's gripped up and Gary's there. Okay, that's an interesting one because clearly he is trying to stay left and the car has bounced across the road. Okay, so I'll get onto that a bit more in a moment. So Art Pal, yeah, I think maybe a little blindsided to Jimmy ahead, I'm not sure. Let's see what happens here. Okay, I think Art Pal may just have dipped his wheels on the grass here. Yes, he has. Okay. Now that will have an effect on his grip. and looking at it, yeah, okay, his rear end has started to slide. Now, is that because of him reacting to Jimmy? Maybe. Will the tyres being on the grass played a factor? Yes, definitely. Okay, so yeah, Art Pal's car was sliding before he gets to Jimmy. So massively unfortunate one that. Would I class it as an unsafe return to track by Jimmy? It would be harsh to do so, but at the same time, if that has caused Art Pal to crash, then you could say yes, it is an unsafe return to track. But what I will say is you can clearly see that Jimmy is doing his level best to stay over on the left hand side of the track, and there's no reason why at that point he couldn't have entered the track and stayed left and been perfectly okay. He's just massively unfortunate that the curb has bounced him into the road, and you can see the bit where it grips up his front tyres. So yeah, massively unfortunate for Twilight, massively unfortunate for Jimmy, majorly fortunate for Nelly. SRI got lucky, SGP gained a place, and yeah, desperately unlucky for Art Pal. But yeah, we were I'm trying to think, were we asked? No, we weren't asked to have a look at that one. That was just one of those crashes that we saw had happened on the pack cam, but we didn't know what had happened, so there we go. Right, okay, now on to the next one, which we have been asked to have a look at. It hasn't been reported. I think the message basically said, admins, can you have a look at this thing? So let's go and do that, shall we? Free admins, please look at my cool spin. Now, there are quite a few bits of footage here. Now, this part I'm showing wasn't actually asked for us to look at, but we want to show it anyway. So Steve F1 going down the main straight here is going to weave, and what he's doing is he's trying to not give any one person loads of slipstream, so now he's going to start weaving. And what we want to mention is that Steve F1 is far enough ahead of the 4 cars behind to be able to do this. As soon as they get close, he straightens up and carries on. And what I will say is, as Art Pal goes left, well done to those 4 drivers for not trying to follow his slipstream, because it's so easy to do in that position. But here we can see from Art Pal's view, yeah, Steve F1 is more than far enough ahead to be able to do this tactic. Now, if any one of all of these 4 drivers have bumped after each other, they'll be perhaps overtaken Steve. Okay, so as we get close to the corner, we don't really see a lot here from this particular view on Art Pal. But there's a lot of factors for us to actually go over. So Gary gets a bit of a run on Art Pal, goes alongside. There is a tiny bit of contact there, but then both drivers do exactly what they'd expect to do. And then, hello matey, here comes Rich Blues up the left hand side. Now we'll get on to him in a moment, because Critical is also on the right hand side, and there's Art Pal going off to the left. Okay, so we're on board now with Critical, who is behind Gary, and what we're going to see here is Critical's got a decent slipstream. Now, he may have been better off bump drafting, but he's gone for the move, made it 3 wide. Absolutely no problem with making it 3 wide there. Gets down to the corners, a little bit of movement, and from here you can't really see a lot of what happens, and goes around the corner. Now we'll go to Rich Blues. Now this is an interesting situation, because Rich has got a decent run here and sort of goes left and then finds a little bit of space, and he's perfectly entitled to do so there. He has now just dipped his wheels on the grass as we get into the braking zone. A little bit of movement on the car, but nothing too drastic, and then we see Art Pal going off. But again, from that view, we don't really get the full view of what happened, so we've got a few more views. So looking off ball, we'll look at them all again. Okay, so Art Pal, Gary get side by side, a little bit of contact, that can happen. They do the right things here. Now we're 4 wide. Okay, Critical's made it 3 wide, Rich has come to make it 4 wide. And what I want to mention is, normally we would say, you don't make it 3 wide, don't make it 4 wide, it's not worth it. But in this situation, there's nothing wrong with them making it 3 wide and even Rich making it 4 wide because of where they are on the straight. Yes, they've completed quite a bit of the straight, but they've still got a lot of the straight to go. Now, because Rich has got on the scene last, it is 100% on him to make sure that what he does here is clean. And to be honest, he pretty much does everything you'd expect him to do in that position, and we will go through it in a little bit of slow motion in a little while. Now from Gary here, he ends up being sandwiched and bounces around a little bit, but I've got to say he does brilliantly well to not get bounced around more or overreact on the steering or anything like that. There's a little bit of contact down the straight, but there's nothing major. Art Pal's the same. We get a little bit of contact, but there's no drastic actions, and then unfortunately towards the end we get the spin. Okay, so for Critical, he goes out to the right hand side, and we're going to see that the cars come across a little bit here, just there. So that was a bit of contact, and then there's a little more contact right at the end. But we're not finished. We're not got to the slow-mos yet. Okay, so Gary, and here comes Rich. Now, from this position, we're going to see in a moment as this goes forward, Rich Blues, it looks like he's going to start coming over to the right, but the thing is he is fairly in the position that he's got to, but the road begins to narrow, so Rich is entitled to a car width space. However, the road is going to narrow, so Rich is going to follow that white line, which is going to bring him a little bit into Gary. Gary is then going to get nudged a little bit into Art Pal, who then Art Pal is going to get nudged a little bit into Critical. Now, all of this up to here is no one's fault. Rich hasn't done anything wrong, neither's Gary, neither's Art Pal, neither's Critical. That's just a little bit of racing bumping, nothing wrong with that. What we would comment on is what happens now. So as this has progressed on, we can see that Critical's car has been bumped out a little bit to the right, but we will have another look from above in a moment, because the cars have obviously moved around a little bit more. They were going down the straight, bit of bumping, nothing major, and then towards the end of the straight it gets a little different. So we're going to see Gary's car come over to the right a little bit. That's Rich following the line he's allowed to do. Gary touches Art Pal touches Critical, and this is one of those situations where for them to have the 4 wide space, as we go up, the track is narrowed a little bit, and ideally it could have done with Critical just being a little bit further over to the right, but 4 wide, it's difficult to know that. There's the first contact. Everything there absolutely fine. However, from this point, this is where I would say Critical makes a little bit of an error. Ideally, I'd like to see Critical go straight here and stay to the right side of the white line. He doesn't do that. He does steer slightly left and then does begin to come left a little bit more. And what that then does is it pinches Art Pal's nose. Now, he may not realise just how close things are with the 3 cars next to him. But because Critical is now moving over towards the left, is reducing the space for the cars on the left hand side. That then makes his rear touch Art Pal's front. Now, it is possible that Critical has been caught out by the radar triangles. If you don't know about that, Critical, ask, we will tell you. It may have looked like he had the space to move over, but that's why we do the G-Spot. We can see that there isn't the space for him to move over. So as this progresses on a little bit more, we see that there is a little bit of contact there with Art Pal's front, and that is then going to pivot him with his rear on Gary's front. It's going to pivot him and send him into a spin. Now, in this situation, Gary 100% has done nothing wrong. I am actually I want to praise Gary for how he conducted himself down this straight in the braking zone and going around the corner. Brilliant. Rich Blues, you're a bit fucking mental making it 4 wide, but at least you did it in a place where it's okay to go 4 wide. Obviously, what happens at the corner is important. Now, I mentioned that because Rich was the last on the scene to make it 4 wide, everything he does has to be perfectly clean. Because if Rich had been moving over to the right unfairly and making the other cars hit each other, then whatever happens at the corner would be on Rich. But what Rich has done is he's fairly got himself into a position, and then some way later down the road, it narrows a little bit. Now, Rich can't do anything. I mean, at one point, he does actually dip his wheels on the grass trying to give space. But he can't really do anything other than hold that side of the track, which is what he does, and it does move him towards Gary a little bit. Now, some people might go, well, that's Rich's fault then. Well, that's not how I see it, because that's just one of those racing situations. If you're on a curvy straight, if you're hugging the white line and the car right next to you isn't, at some point you're going to move away from them and then come back towards them. If they haven't left you space, then there's going to be contact. It doesn't mean it's your fault. So in this scenario, it's massively unfortunate that Gary perhaps hasn't realised that the track narrows a bit. But I wouldn't necessarily expect him to. That's why I say Gary hasn't done anything wrong. He's very aware of Art Pal on his right hand side, and he's doing everything he can to avoid him. And he's now aware of Rich on his left hand side. It's very easy to get pinballed in that situation. So Gary's doing what I think would probably a normal thing to do, is just sort of holding his line and keeping it straight and make sure he's not going wild anywhere. So the circumstances just then get unlucky. So Rich nudges Gary nudges Art Pal nudges Critical. Critical may not have been aware of how that first nudge has happened, but right after that has happened, everything's okay. Up until the point where Critical starts coming across to the left. Because what we saw was Rich Blues didn't try coming into the corner, he stayed way out wide. Gary didn't try coming into the corner, he was giving space to Rich on his left and Art Pal on his right, and he actually braked a bit earlier than the both of them. Art Pal is sort of braking with Critical but a bit earlier than Critical and doesn't move left, which means he isn't moving into Gary and Rich Blues, but he does move a little bit towards the right. However, it's into a space that I wouldn't say is his, but it's into a space that he's entitled to be in. So Critical's final move of coming back to the left is what I would say unfortunately resulted in Art Pal ending up in the barrier. Now, is it something that I would give him a penalty for? I don't know. I haven't really looked at it in terms of being a steward. I've just tried to analyse the data, explain what I believe I've seen, and what I believe happened. And obviously the other admins have had a look at it as well, and they're on the same agreement. So, yeah. Nothing really much happening in that one at all. It's really unlucky, and it's just that final little move to the left from Critical that unfortunately ends up with Art Pal spinning. But it is in a situation where it would have been so difficult to know what you'd done, or what any, because I mean each one of the four drivers at the time of it happening didn't know exactly what had happened, and it's understandable. It's fair. I mean, it's hard enough going side by side. You go 3 wide, it can be tricky. You go 4 wide, it can be tough. But there are circumstances where there's no problem with going 4 wide. I mean, when we raced at Indy, is it Indy? No, Daytona Road Course. There was a few occasions where drivers were getting 4 or 5 wide around the banking, no problem. But what you do when it comes to the tighter, slower corners, that's when it gets important. Is somebody making it 4 wide going into a tight corner? That's not a wise thing to do. So this is where, as an example, had Rich Blues made it 4 wide getting into the braking zone, then I'd be throwing the book at him. I'd have to throw it quite hard because he lives quite far away from me, but obviously that's how we would view it. It's like, you have made it 4 wide way too late, and that has then had knock-on effects. or had critical made it 3 wide way too late into the braking zone. So doing it in the braking zone, not a good idea. Ray, don't do it in the braking zone. Do it like they do on the Discovery Channel. Because you and me, baby, ain't nothing but mammals. Okay, right, I think I've waffled on enough there. Hopefully that has given a good explanation of what the classification of parking it is. The clarification of the steward's report, a good view of what happened at Bathurst, and hopefully an explanation of this one as well. The final thing I will say about this is, having watched this and watched it with the other admins, it is one of those where it would kind of be very, very harsh to put a penalty on someone for this. But at the same time, it is also very, very harsh that for the likes of Art Pal or anyone in his situation, was running in 7th place, I think, and ends up at the back. So yeah, it's kind of not swings and roundabouts, but it may seem harsh to give a penalty for it, but at the same time, someone has been unfortunately taken out of the race for a lap. For the last lap. Right, okay, that's me. I'm done. Finished waffling. I'm going to go and get a drink. Have a good one, everybody. See you all soon. Hopefully not too soon, because that means there's not too many incidents going on. But considering that we're about to race at Spa, I can imagine there's a few things going to happen. Right, have a good one, everybody. You know what to do. Like, subscribe, hit that notifications bell, and we'll see you all again soon.